Okay, we're live. Hey, this is my review of Lupin the Third Part Six, I guess, in a way. I just got done I just got done watching it. Dang, I don't even know if I'm saying the right. Yeah, I just got done. Yeah, I just got done watching it a couple hours ago. I was thinking like, how do I put like finish in there anyway? So I was getting confused. Okay, yeah. So I just got done watching it a couple of hours ago. Um, and just immediate general thoughts. I have like a little, some notes here that I've taken that I want to, say in the rest of the video. But I think in general, I like it. I liked it better than parts four and five. Now, with that being said, I have to go back and rewatch some of part four and five. Or I have to go rewatch both those parts four and five, Lupin and excuse me, in both their entireties. But yeah, I think I like it in general more than parts four and five. And even though I have to rewatch all of it, both of those in their entirety, there are certain plot lines and episodes that I've rewatched, just in passing. And the three that I want to bring up are the Padar plot line, Padar, however you say it, from part five, where Ami befriends that one, not Indonesian, like a Nepalian or Tibetan girl. It seems to be like from that area, and then she turns out to be the princess of that kingdom, Padar. That whole plot line I just thought was very uninteresting. The storyline at the end of part five where Goemon is doubting that Lupin sees him as an equal. I didn't think that was very interesting. I just thought that whole plotline was very contrived and forced. The episode, I think it was episode 9 in part 4, where Goemon and the girl assassin, that particular storyline, and at the end it's revealed that the girl assassin has been the one that's been killing everyone from their group from the past. All those storylines to me were just really contrived and just not very memorable, and they were just uninteresting. And I think for part six, pretty much every episode for the most part had me interested. The general story and plotline was by far the most interesting as far as like keeping me interested, compared to part four and part five. But with that being said, even though I think that the storytelling in this part I think is better in general, I think that the payoff at the end of each main storyline in part six, namely the Raven and what happens with Tomoe, were ultimately not as good as I like them to be. And I think this is just kind of like a running thing now in modern Lupin. And with that being said, though, I was rewatching some of like the Da Vinci episodes in part four. They're actually not that bad. I was rewatching. I think it was 22 or 23 just now, or maybe like an hour ago, and I was that was pretty good. I thought that the goal of Da Vinci was really good. The general dialogue and all that stuff was pretty good. But I think just thinking back on it now, I think the main problem with part four is all the Rebecca stuff. I think that's like the main flaw of part four. One sec. But yeah, I mean, the reason I'm pointing out the Da Vinci stuff is just because, like, what I just said about like the payoff of the climax and everything. That's probably that I would say that's probably better than the payoff and the climax of the Raven storyline in part six and the Tomoe stuff in part six as well. Um, and yeah. So there's gonna be some spoilers in here. Some stuff I won't spoil, some stuff I will. So I'm about to spoil like what the ending of the whole Raven plotline is. For the whole Raven plotline to just come down to dud missiles is very anticlimactic. Not anticlimactic. Well, yeah, anticlimactic and just kind of disappointing. Because it just kind of felt like when you introduce like Sherlock Holmes like into a storyline, and there's like a whole the storytelling is like very like detective like in nature. You expect some sort of like grand reveal or some big plot twist, and it just kind of seems like dud missiles or missiles that have gone kaput since World War II, and they don't really mean anything in the end. It's just very disappointing and just not the payoff that we were looking for. And that's kind of like I think like a running theme in the entirety of part six, which I'll get to in a minute. So yeah, I didn't like that. The other thing, the identity of a certain person. I think I actually wasn't like thinking about it too much. Like, so in the first episode, we see like this executioner or this hitman from the Raven organization, and I won't really go into too much detail on like what the Raven is. If you guys want to go watch it yourself, watch the first episode, or just this series and this part in of itself, then you guys can basically learn like what's going on in like 5 minutes. But there's like a hitman that kills someone in the first episode, and there's kind of like this underlying plotline like who is this person, and I wasn't really thinking about it too hard, but after I think it was episode 10 where yeah it was episode 10 I believe, where Sherlock takes Lily like to the street where her father got shot. And that's when I realized like could it possibly be this guy, but I just felt like that was just a little too obvious, right? And it turns out that that obvious guess that I which I was guessing like, or which I thought was a which I thought was a possibility, but just I was hoping that it wasn't one. It turned out to be true. And it was just kind of like a bit obvious when you think about it in terms of like who are all the new characters that are introduced and everything, right? So yeah, that the identity and the reveal of like that certain hitman or that certain person was also not could have been a little better. I still think it was good even though it was obvious, but I was just hope like I feel like if you're gonna reveal the identity of a person, you gotta have like many suitable suspects or culprits, if you will, and then you reveal that person, because that just makes it a little more um, exciting. um, and also another thing is that since Holmes is in this first half, so before I say this, so part 6 is 24 episodes, and kind of like what they were doing in part 5 of Lupin, their underlying story arcs, if you will, like episode. So in part 5, for example, I think episodes 17 or 18 to 21 were about the Padar plotline that I was speaking about, right? So similarly here in part 6, it's split into two quote unquote arcs or episodes. 24 episodes are split into two quote unquote arcs slash story arcs. And episodes 1 through 12 are the Raven plotline, which is the plotline where Sherlock is involved, and then 13 to 24 is about Tomoe, and at the beginning of episode 13, you basically find out that Tomoe is, and even in the trailer, that Lupin or Tomoe is Lupin's mother, or quote unquote maternal figure, I should say. I mean, that's kind of obvious. You kind of learned that in episode 14 anyway, so it's not really much of a spoiler. So yeah. Anyway, what was I saying before? So since Holmes is in the first half in that Raven plotline of episodes 1 through 12 of part 6, if you know anything about like Sherlock Holmes lore, you can figure out like who certain homages to other characters they'll show up, like Watson, for example, right? So you can guess that if you know anything about Sherlock Holmes lore, you can guess that a certain other character will appear, and that character does appear. You guys know who I'm talking about. And I just kind of felt like this character should have had more screen time too, but because he didn't really have a whole lot in this part, I figured that he's going to have way more screen time in the next part. Like he's kind of like a setup, and he may be like the next I don't he may be a villain or not. We'll see. Um, the Tomoe plotline I thought was interesting. I think like kind of like the Raven plotline, like with the detective like nature. This also was holding my interest about you because you're trying to like solve something or figure out something, right? So I think that angle, like in any sort of story, tends to like hold my interest as long as the circumstances and everything are appropriate, and they seem exciting enough, right? So to find out like who Tomoe was, or like what she was planning, that like the build up to that was I thought pretty interesting. But the ending, like what I was saying earlier, the payoff and the climax of that was just not what I was hoping it to be. So I'm gonna spoil it, the ending here. So basically, the ending of the Tomoe plotline is that Tomoe is basically she's basically good at hypnotic suggestion. If you guys have played Metal Gear Solid 4, you guys will know where I'm going with Ocelot slash Big Boss, that sort of thing. She can basically hypnotize people essentially, right? And she was kind of like a teacher slash a tutor. And one of the things Lupin, like I said, Tomoe was basically Lupin's maternal figure, her quote unquote his mother, if you will, right? And she loved him like her own kid. And so the overarching goal of the Tomoe plotline is that Tomoe loves Lupin so much that she wants Lupin to genuinely love her like his actual mom. So, and that's just not really that dramatic a goal for a main villain. I don't, I mean, I certainly like the use of a parent's controlled love for their child. I think just using that like as a motif can certainly be, certainly interesting enough. I think I can get behind it, but just for that to be the main thing, the main answer, the main whole thing about the plot line at the end is just not that dramatic and not that cathartic and not the payoff that I think viewers were looking for, and I just don't think it should have been the main draw slash thing. And the other thing is that Tomoe's plan itself didn't make much sense to me either, right? So basically, from episodes 13 to 24, they're all like these different female characters. So Tomoe trained all these women to get Lupin to come back to her. But what kind of bothered me was that some of the women that he met with, he didn't even interact with long enough for them to tell them the lines of the poem. So basically, Tomoe's plan to get Lupin to come back to her was, they were like she basically like because she's a she hypnotizes people. She can put like she can plant memories, subconscious thoughts in other people. And so she used the lines of a poem, and she used each she plant. So she trained all these other women like she did Lupin. So that's another thing that I should say, right? Tomoe actually trained Lupin in terms of, well, not necessarily trained Lupin, because that part may be false because of like the whole false memories plot point, but Lupin, she taught Lupin a lot is basically what I'm trying to get at, right? So she was a teacher slash a tutor, and these women that I'm talking about, all these different female characters that you see in all these other episodes, 1324, like she trained them as well. And she had them recite lines of the poem, right? And then because they were women and because Lupin is like, he's like a masterclass thief and he speaks a lot of languages and he's good at master disguise and all this stuff, these different lines from the poem were translated into different languages, and they somehow like activated like the subconscious hypnotism within Lupin. And that was basically her plan, for Lupin to meet these women, hear the lines of the poem, and then this will awaken the subconscious memories that are from back when she trained him as a kid, and that would make Lupin come back to her and be like his quote unquote like child, right? But that plan doesn't really make much sense. It just seems a little convoluted and contrived. And the other thing I didn't understand is like why in episode 12, he's first meets, or episode 13, excuse me, he first meets Matea, and Matea ends up being like one of the women that Tomoe has trained. But then at the end, at the final two episodes, Matea is still speaking as though she is still under the control of Tomoe, that subconscious control, if you will. And yeah, that's just extremely strange and weird to me. Like that's what she had been trained to do, basically, right? And I can understand that she's mad at Tomoe for basically dictating her life, training her, the whole hypnotic suggestion thing. Same thing at Lupin for existing, which is, even though that's a little too anime and doesn't really fit Lupin as a series, in my opinion. That motivation doesn't fit Lupin as a franchise, in my opinion. But yeah, I thought that was kind of weird at the end, where she was still insisting on like killing everyone, and like with that vacant look in her eyes, which suggested that she was still being subconsciously controlled. But even with all these criticisms, though, I gotta say there were some really good episodes. Like I said, the storytelling in general was like very good in part 6. Especially two episodes that stand out to me are episodes 10 and 15. Famed anime director Mamoru Oshii, if you guys know who that is, you guys should know if you guys are familiar with anime. He did The Boy and the Beast. I think he did Belle recently. Belle. He directed 2 of the episodes for part 6, and that was, one was episode 4, which I kind of tweeted about, and then the other one was episode 10. And 10 was out of the 2, I preferred 10 to 4. 10 I thought was just really good. I don't want to spoil it for you, because I just think the introduction of some elements like in that episode are really good for Lupin. I thought that was really good, and that actually lends itself to a point I'll make later. But yeah, I preferred episode 10 to episode 4. Jigen is still my favorite character in the entire franchise, and episode 15, the other episode that I'm talking about, is just a pure example of why. And speaking about Jigen, if you guys didn't know, there was a prequel special kind of like thing before the act. It's basically episode 0, if you will, of part 6, where the longtime voice actor of Jigen, his name is something Kobayashi, I forget his first name, but he's been voicing Jigen for like years now, like 30 years, 35 years, something like that, 60 years, I don't know. It's just, some insane amount of time, right? And basically that he was retiring, so that episode 0 was the last time that he was voicing Jigen as a character. And my second favorite Seiyu, his name is Akio Otsuka. He voices Solid Snake in Japanese from the Metal Gear series. He's a replacement for Jigen from now on, and I think he's a really good replacement. He's one of my favorite Seiyus, and I thought he was really good. I liked it. I think it was definitely suitable. Uh, but yeah, so what was I saying? Yeah, so yeah, I was saying that about Jigen and Akiotsuka. Back to episode 4 though, which is one of the other episodes directed by Oshi. It was very weird to see someone like Duke Togo be killed in episode 4. So there's a character that looks like Duke Togo from Gogo 13, same art style and everything, and I'm pretty sure it was done as an homage to Takao Saito, who is the author of Gogo 13, who passed away last year. So I think that was kind of like an homage to him. And it was just weird to see that character like that looks like Duke Togo be killed. It's almost like, I just saw like a sin be committed in real time or a crime be committed in real time. Something blasphemous just happened. Um, so that was one weird thing that I really didn't like that stuck out. Or not, I didn't say, I wouldn't say I hated it or nothing. It was just something that was just strange to like have happen. And another thing that was kind of strange was that the red jewel that is introduced in the beginning of the Tomoe storyline in episode 13. It was made out to be like very important or something, and I think it could have just been a bit more important. But my interpretation of it was that I think it was just a test on Tomoe's part to see if Lupin was quote unquote ready from all the training that she had given him, right? So yeah, very strange. Just two random things that I thought were a little off-putting and strange. Another good thing that I really like about this part though was just that things were a bit more creepier and scarier in this episode, or in this part too. I was mentioning before, like that Raven hitman, that Raven executioner. Whenever it focuses like on his eyes, that was pretty scary. When you see that episode 10, the design of a particular character, that was very scary too, very off-putting and creepy. In episode 22, when one of the women, or one of the episodes focuses on one of the female students of Tomoe. One of these students, she goes and lives with this foster family, like in some like Arctic country or Arctic region, right? And turns out like that this family had actually taken in this female student's mother way back. So they're an old couple, right? And in episode 22, the mother, or the wife, if you will, there's like a very creepy scene of her in episode 22 where she's like standing behind the door and just like vacantly staring like at the student, right? Staring. Her name is Marielle, by the way. And I'd say even at the end of part 6, like at the end of the Tomoe storyline, when Lupin goes back to his grandfather's mansion, and the entire mansion is like decrepit and empty, and it just gives off like a very like eerie atmosphere. So I thought that was a pretty good addition to the part. One thing I didn't like, if I were just to go back to like Lupin as a character, just characters in general, I'm going to speak about Lupin a little bit now, is I didn't like Lupin being mind controlled for a bit. I don't really think that suits his character or his story. It just seems a bit too extreme to make him vulnerable, I think. I think there are certain ways to get at the vulnerabilities of a character, but I don't know, to make Lupin like mind controlled is just, and I think you can make him mind controlled like in humorous scenarios, but I think just to make him like, have him like clutch his head and be like, ah, like that, and just be mind controlled, that was just like very weird. But with that being said, for him to overcome that at the end, and for him to shoot Tomoe at the end, again, like I said, there would be spoilers. I basically thought that was a good character moment for him. I don't know, just something about it I liked. I think the fact that he has to shoot his maternal figure in his life, even though she was like a very, her love was twisted. I thought that was a good character moment for Lupin as a whole. So there's good and bad to it. This part definitely has my favorite music and OST in general. I just like the the atmospheric, quiet sort of tunes. I really like that. Very jazzy, all piano stuff. So I really like that. And oh yeah, so now we can get to a theme in this part, which I was talking about earlier with like the dud missiles, right? One theme in this part is kind of like the throwing away of things that don't matter, or the uselessness of things. So what I mean by this is basically at the end of part six, at the end of the Tomoe storyline, the Tomoe arc, Lupin at the end is able to retrieve a box, right? So when Tomoe first came into Lupin's life when he was a kid, his grandfather, Lupin's grandfather, employed Tomoe, who was touted to be like a tutor, and she was obviously a hypnotist as well, right? uh, she was obviously like teaching him and stuff, right? But the storyline is that Tomoe at one point she stole something from the Lupin family's like the vault in that mansion, right? And then Lupin as a kid goes and sees her gets shot and then she dies, right? But one of the things that she kind of like stole was like this box. Um, and it's kind of posited that towards the end that what's in that box proves that Tomoe is Lupin's real mother. But then it goes to show, but then it turns out that that's not actually the case. What's in the box is a key to Lupin's actual roots, whatever that means, whether that's his actual parents or whether he's actually descended from Arsene Lupin, whatever that means, right? So he retrieves this box at the end of the at the end of the series, but then he throws it in the fire. And so he opens it and looks at it, but then he throws it in the fire because it doesn't really matter to him, right? So that's an example. That's an expression of the theme that I'm talking about. And which by the way, I hated that happened because the opportunity to know more about Lupin's roots is like way too tempting a plot point. I feel like they should expand on that just to make, not necessarily to flesh him out. I just think it would be a good way to like develop his character. I think if the idea that we'll never know about like not necessarily his family, like it doesn't, we don't, it's his parents don't even have to be like important characters. Then who knows, like his brother, whoever, whether he is a kid, doesn't necessarily have to be about family. Just something about his past, I think, would be like really good, you know. Um, so yeah, but so that's definitely expression of the arc I'm talking about. Jigen with the Tear of Marseille in episode 15. The Tear of Marseille is like this gem that he gets for, one of his quote unquote like ex lovers, if you will. And like I said, episodes 13 through 24 are all about like female students that Tomoe is trained. So she also ends up being like a student of Tomoe's. He gets it back and he just throws it like in the water, like one of the most beautiful jewels in the world. He throws it like in the water as a means to move on, which is poetic. I just don't like the fact that something so valuable is being thrown away. Like I said, the dud missiles at the end of the first half, and in the first episode of part six, we see like this poster, and it's supposed to like mean something about like the raven and everything, and it ends up being like a red herring. It ends up not meaning anything. So there's like this theme of things not meaning anything and the fact that they don't matter like in the long run. And it's certainly like one of the motifs that I noticed like throughout the entire part. Now that I've watched it, like binge watched it and watched it in bulk. Um, and so yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I guess the final thing that I have to say is that with all the focuses on the crew, like episodes based around Lupin, obviously with the Tomoe stuff, episodes, and obviously with Sherlock in the past, with what happened with John Watson and Lily, with the Jigen in episode, I think it was 8 and 15. Like I said, one of my favorite episodes. Uh, Episodes focused on Fujiko, like in 15, and then I think it was 22 where she meets I forget the girl's name, like one of her like friends back when she was like a thief, like back in the past. Episode 16, like which is based on Goemon, where Goemon is front and center. All these characters have like kind of episodes and storylines dedicated to them, except for Zenigata. And I'm just really trying to think of like episode. And I mean Zenigata, like he's involved, but I think we need like episodes dedicated to Zenigata specifically, like to explore his character a little bit. because I can't remember like anything in part 4 or 5 really doing that, except maybe for, I think it was part 4, it might have been part 5, where Lupin gets like very bored and then he gets captured, and then Zenigata seeks to like free him because he doesn't want it to be the end of like their their goose chase, if you will. So I think Zenigata in the next part should have some more episodes dedicated to him. And yeah, that's basically all I have. So, like in short, I mean, I know I spent 25 minutes just kind of like speaking. In short, I did like, from what I remember, and from what I remember from watching parts 4 and 5, I think part 6 is the best of the three. I know most people think part 5 is the best. For me, it's part 6. But with that being said, I think I'll rewatch part 4 and part 5 at some point for Lupin, and then I'll come back with a stronger, clearer opinion on that, because, you know, like I said, I was rewatching some stuff and I thought some of that stuff was pretty bad, but part 4, but like the stuff with Leonardo da Vinci, I thought was like really good in part 4 for the most part, especially the climax or the lead up to it. I think from what I remember, what I said at the beginning, the main flaw of part 4 was just kind of like Rebecca herself. So, and it's kind of funny. Like the end of part 4 of Lupin is very similar to the end of part 5 JoJo's, with everyone falling asleep, it being based in Italy and everything. So I just noticed that. I don't know if that was intentional by them or not, but that was certainly interesting. Uh, but yeah, I mean that's all I have. Thank you guys for watching, and yeah, if you guys have watched Lupin Part 6, let me tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you.